If you want to know how to scale your business, maintain all of your customer relationships, and maintain performance, maybe purpose is the answer.
In this episode, we're going to go deep on how to leverage purpose in business to elevate both your company and the people within it. Let's go. Are you looking for a positive influence in your personal or professional life?
Do you need some inspiration?
Hi, I'm Colt Briner.
And I'm Sarah Armstrong.
We're on a journey of elevation,
learning and sharing what we discover about how to live fulfilling lives and bring out the best in those around us.
Join us as we explore multiple perspectives, ideas, and influences on our own personal journeys of elevation. All right, hello everyone. Here with Brent Lockhart, President of Ratermann Manufacturing. Very excited to have you here to talk with us about the role that purpose plays in elevating both a company and the individuals inside that company. Brent, I really appreciate you taking time with us today. I have been privileged to kind of sit on the sideline, get a sideline view of Ratermann's work with establishing and integrating purpose in the organization. I'm really excited about you being here to share what your experience has been with purpose at Ratermann. Just kind of want you to unpack this for us. So, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Colt and Sarah. It's good to see both of you guys again. And we wouldn't be on this journey really if it wasn't for you, Colt. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Great, thank you for that.
Well, Brent, I'll kind of just kick this off and dive right in. So we have done episodes on personal purpose and the importance of having purpose in your personal life and achieving your goals. Can you just talk to us about what purpose means to you from an organizational perspective?
Yeah, and I appreciate that question. From an organizational perspective, Sarah, I think it's very new to us, right? And Colt and I were talking a little bit earlier about how I think a lot of people are starting to hear more about purpose, maybe what is purpose, how does that maybe fit into our organization. And we had started to kind of hear it on the periphery as well and started to dive more into it just kind of by happenstance. Our vice president and Colt were, I think, at a conference together, if I'm not mistaken, Colt, and just started to kind of kick off a conversation. And when Steve, our VP, came back, we started to talk about the conversation that he and Colt had had. And I said, that's pretty fascinating stuff. I've heard about purpose, but I don't know much about it. So we talked a lot and circled back with Colt and said, hey, can you help us? We're very, very interested in how we think being a purpose-driven organization can help, not only our brand, but our people and, how it is that we go to market, more engagement. So, as it relates to, let's fast forward 6 months, we now see a huge difference in our organization and the way in which we're viewed not only by our customers, but by our employees, right? So now that engagement it's taken us to just a new level. Everybody's got a new perspective. I was mentioning to Colt a little bit earlier about, how customer service, somebody in that department, for example, might pick up the phone, have a conversation with a customer, but that conversation was limited to, hey, Ratermann, we'd like to order part number XYZ. Thank you, part number XYZ. We process it. Appreciate your call. On we go. Today, that conversation's much different. Today, that conversation is more of, hi, Ratermann, we'd like to order part number XYZ. And now our customer service people are saying, oh, that's fantastic. We can certainly help you. Can you tell me a little bit more about the application for that part number? Now you start to have a conversation. You're a little bit more engaged. And now our people also feel more empowered. They didn't feel like maybe they could have that conversation previously. They felt like maybe their job was just take an order, get off the phone and answer the next one. Now we're engaging folks. Now the customer says, hey, and this won't make sense to anybody but listening, but if a customer calls up and he says, hey, we'd like to order a cryogenic hose that's 6 feet long. We would normally take that part number, we'd process it, we'd ship it out, and we wouldn't talk to that customer until the next time they called, if they called again.
Sure.
Now we're saying, tell me a little bit more about the application. Once they find out a little bit more about the application, I think our people are also starting to realize they probably know more than they thought they did by having these conversations. So now they're actually saying, well, I hear what you want to order, but now that you've told me a little bit more about that conversation, have you ever considered this?
Sure.
Now the customer is saying, wow, you know what? I really appreciate that. They get off the phone, they have a conversation, they're engaged. He may end up ordering the part that he wanted originally. He may end up ordering something completely different based on the conversation that fit his application better.
Yeah.
So now our customer feels more engaged, more appreciative of that engagement. Our employees feel like they are more engaged in the conversation. They're more empowered to have those conversations. So purpose, that's just one example that I've seen so far in the last 6 months of how purpose is it's just been a game changer for our organization.
That is such a great example.
Yeah.
I love it.
Really strong example.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there's many other dimensions to it. I'd like to get to those, but before I get there, I want to ask, I mean, you had to invest in bringing purpose.
We did.
It took resources, time, money, perhaps. I'd like to hear about what it looked like to invest in purpose.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the investment in purpose is really probably boils down to two things, right? For us, it's time, as you just suggested, and content or content creation.
Okay.
And originally, it was mostly time. When we came to the organization and presented our purpose, and our purpose is providing solutions to the people that are building the future and changing the world.
Great purpose.
And we think it's a great purpose as well, because really that's what we do. But how do we give that message to the organization without them just listening and nodding their head and saying, okay, I guess we're doing purpose now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
That's not very powerful. But a lot of messages can be received that way. And we wanted to make sure that with all the time that we'd already had invested in identifying and really understanding our purpose, that we could communicate that message to the rest of the organization. So that takes a tremendous amount of time. Yeah, we don't have a lot of employees. We're about 65 employees today, but doesn't matter if you're 2 employees or 500 employees, everybody's busy during the course of any given day.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got to somehow create the time to not just send the message, but talk about that message, what it means to our organization, what that means to the individuals within the organization. And that's the time portion of it, right? So we'll have departmental meetings, individual meetings, meeting amongst individual departments, but then also cross-pollination amongst departments to promote conversation from, procurement to customer service to finance, and then how it applies, not just individually, but in that cross-pollination. Yeah. So that takes a tremendous amount of time.
And Brent, I know you gave this great example of kind of tactically how it changed one particular, process in your organization, but can you share a little bit about maybe more in how there's maybe behaviors or thought processes or how the organization itself and the people inside the organization have been elevated from this experience?
Yeah, I can. I wish I had more to share, but I'm excited that I have some.
Sure.
Because, being 6 months in, it did, and I'll go back to this, why it was kind of a struggle for us in the beginning, because I think our approach perhaps wasn't perfect, but nothing is. You've got to go out there and you've got to try. But what I've recognized, and others, especially in our management team, have recognized, not only in departments but in individuals, is the conversation is now about purpose. The conversation is about their engagement. Their conversation is about what we're trying to achieve for our customers, not just what we're providing to them. So it's a much deeper conversation. It's a much deeper thought that people are putting into virtually everything they do. And that's not just, externally. What's rewarding for me is it's internally. People are having those conversations. It's improving the relationships amongst your peers in the organization, because solutions, and one of the reasons we thought solutions was powerful for us is the solutions can be a variety of different things. You can be providing solutions to your peers. It can be something as easy as saying, hey, I've got an issue. A customer called up and he can't find an invoice, Well, you know what? I'll provide that solution for you. Let's think of everything from a solution perspective, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
Very
that
cool.
answers your question
That
spot
is,
on, but I
that
tend to
is,
ramble.
no, that was fantastic. I mean, I'm excited to have you back, 6 months from now or a year from now, and ask that question again, because it seems as though, you've brought the organization both individually and as a whole, like up a level, right? Everybody's kind of up their level. They're having, more engaging conversations. They're thinking about things from multiple perspectives, being more innovative, which I think is just so exciting.
Yeah, and I think for me a better description, Sarah, might be deeper. They're
Deeper.
they're they're
Mhm.
they're 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 thinking more deeply about what it is that they're doing.
I love
Wow.
it. That's fantastic.
So, as I think more deeply about what they're doing, something that I see a lot in purpose driven organizations is that there's just a natural increase in trust and autonomy because you've established the North Star that guides the organization. This is the impact we're trying to achieve. If you know what the company is here to achieve, you're in a better position to make decisions, to empower people to make those decisions. Is that an element you've seen emerging as well?
Absolutely, and I think it's the cohesiveness, right? You develop that cohesiveness because as people as people feel empowered to have those conversations and to present or try and figure out what those solutions might be, then I'm seeing a more cohesive approach. I'm seeing people reach out and try to get more information in order to solve a problem, and they're not as fearful about reaching out. We don't want people to be slapped on the wrist because they're going outside what their normal boundaries might be. We want them to absolutely engage anybody that might help internally or externally.
So I want to. There was something that came up in both Sarah's question and your answer a moment ago was about where purpose is both a company-wide thing and it's also an individual thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to hear from you. In what ways have you seen personal purpose and corporate purpose either work in harmony or come into conflict?
That's an interesting question. One that comes to mind is, and I mentioned that we have these departmental meetings, every week, and then we also have these personal and cross-pollination meetings amongst departments. Our controller has a fantastic approach, and I sat in on a meeting with her team, the finance team, and her approach is the onion and the orchid. So she has her meetings every Monday morning with her group, and she says, "Hey, let's talk about the onions and let's talk about the orchids." The onions being, maybe some of the things that had happened that, didn't maybe go quite the way you had, whether it been personal over the weekend. Let's talk about those without getting too personal, obviously.
Sure.
And if there was anything negative that happened or something you thought could have been done different, let's peel back the layers to that onion. Let's talk about how maybe, with a more purpose backed or a thoughtful purpose approach might have developed a different outcome or contributed to a different outcome. So she'll talk about the onions with her folks, and then she'll talk about the orchids. And the orchids, let's talk about the things that brought you joy over the weekend, or brought you excitement. And that can be personal. And then let's talk about some that interactions that maybe you had internally within the organization, right? And how purpose helped elevate that conversation or that interaction. So I think she's got a fantastic approach to, delving into both the personal and the professional, and then kind of melding the two. So if people are trying to think of purpose as it applies to both.
And have you seen in that experience, have you seen individuals kind of grow their own sense of purpose as a result, or get clarity around their sense of purpose as a result of these conversations?
I think it's probably still a little too early to say definitively, but you can absolutely see the wheels start to turn and the conversations start to change, and recognizing the value start to be appreciated a little bit more, Sarah. So, yeah, I think you can definitely I see individual growth as a result of the purpose conversations for sure. 6 months from now, I think we'll be able to point and say, you know what, this is exactly the result that we were hoping for, but we're certainly starting to see that
And
that
yeah,
thought
that's
process into it.
I love that. It's like obviously these are just little seeds, right? They're starting to
Right.
sprout. So from a
Absolutely.
leadership perspective, how do you foster that and invest in that and help these individuals grow that sense of purpose so that 6 months from now you will start to see more just more definition to that?
Yeah, I think we foster it by continuously having these conversations. I think the most important thing that you can do when you venture into this world of purpose and you introduce it to the organization, it's you've got to have clarity and you've got to have consistency. So our leadership team is challenged with having that consistency and promoting it within the organization, right? Because if we don't have that consistency and that repetitiveness, then I think you're challenged with everything else that's trying to come in, peripherally and suck up time from your day. So we're challenged with making sure that it's at the forefront of every conversation. And I think if we have it at the forefront of every conversation that we have, that might be a departmental or an internal meeting, then what you see is the water cooler talk, right? Then you see people starting to have those conversations on their own, and everything is kind of a purpose-led conversation because it just starts to become part of the DNA. And our hope is that it becomes a big part of the DNA. Again, it's that seed; it's germinating right now, but it's the repetitiveness. It's talking about the meaning of purpose and how it relates personally and professionally, and making sure that conversation is just always being had.
So you're really
That's
talking
excellent.
about the ways that purpose starts to infuse itself in the different functions and operations and activities of the organization, seeing it becoming kind of top of the agenda when you're having your meetings, in the regular communications that you're having, how you're having discussions with the employees, maybe even there's a relationship between your that and your compensation packages. There's one area in particular I want to ask you about, because you mentioned, I think before we started the podcast today, you mentioned that Ratermann has grown from 3 to 65 people. Is that right?
Yeah, we're about 65 people today.
Okay. Has there been a focus in your hiring process to identify people who have their own sense of purpose, or that their purpose aligned with you guys? Tell me about where purpose intersects with hiring for you guys.
Yeah, for us, again, that's the seed, right? And it's germinating because it's, I think purpose to a lot of people is still very foreign today. So what we try to do during our hiring process, in other words, if we bring somebody in and we say, okay, tell us about your purpose and how it affects your daily life, we might get that, people are looking at us like, what the hell are you talking about? Some people don't, some people do. But I think it'll be much different 5 years from now. But
Oh, okay.
today, what we try to do is have the conversation with a prospective employee that says, here's our purpose. Here's what we do internally. And then have discussion and then get their reaction, engage not only their reaction, but then the engagement that promotes. And then that kind of helps us get an idea of whether or not they're actually buying into the purpose, they understand it, they agree with it. So that's helpful for us, certainly, because I think it helps us determine a lot easier whether or not they're going to be. It used to just be a culture conversation, right? We want to find out if they fit into our culture. Now, purpose is a part of our culture. So we want to make sure that they're going to be a good fit there. So I think it helps us to make sure that we're bringing in the right candidate when we ultimately make that decision.
And Brent, what ultimate impact do you hope to achieve, knowing that this is still early stages, but what impact do you hope to have on your employee base by having all of this purpose? Obviously, there's been some great experiences with your customers, but have you got any feedback from your staff or your employees of how this has impacted them personally, their energy levels, how they present themselves at work, anything like that?
Yeah, I think everybody probably has a story by now.
Cool.
Yeah, and some folks, it's funny because some folks will engage immediately with the purpose. They'll understand it. They'll want to be a part of it. And then you sort of have folks that kind of sit in the background. They observe a little bit. They're a little hesitant, not quite sure.
Uh-huh.
but you can start to see those folks are the ones that excite me when you see them start to actually come on board, right? I mean, I love the people that come on board immediately, don't get me wrong. But it's those outliers that are a little bit maybe hesitant or resistant. So yeah, we do see that. I mean, I made the mention of the story earlier with our customer service department because that was a real story, right? She said, hey, I was having a conversation with a customer, and normally I would have just taken down the part number and hung up the phone and answered the next call. But I found myself now wanting to be more engaged and find out more about their application. And, I probably wouldn't have done that if it weren't for this purpose conversation. So to me, that's pretty exciting stuff.
That's awesome. I love it.
I really appreciate that you were able to share that story. As I reflect on when I first met you, Brent, I would say skepticism is probably one of the energies that was present. I mean, very friendly encounter with you, really appreciated the conversation, but there was this question kind of present in your thinking. Are you just going to ask us to hold hands here, Colt? What is this? Is this touchy-feely stuff? Are we going to make corporate progress through this?
Yeah, I'm a skeptic at the core, Colt. I'll admit it.
Well, and it's how thrilling to start with that, and very honest the way you brought that to me, and then to see like you were saying, as you observe individuals who sort of sit off on the side, what are we doing here? To have seen you first of all take that step, and now you observing other people take that step, I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, well, you remember a lot of the conversations we had and the concerns that I had were that we were going to be able to communicate this and engage our entire organization, right?
Yep.
That was my biggest concern, because I want to make sure that if we're going to do something like this, it's going to involve, this amount of, both time and development of content. I could see the value in it, but only if we could engage everybody in the organization.
Yeah.
And sorry, Colt, go ahead.
So now I'm curious, as you engage everybody, is it critical that purpose remain fixed and stable over time, or do you find that it's important for it to be fluid, like between fluid and stable? What's your thought about it?
I'm not a big fan of stable.
Okay.
I think stable feels warm and fuzzy. I think stable makes you feel content. I think stale also can become that emerald sea that turns into the green stagnant pond.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I like to see things be fluid, and I think that the fluidity is probably the most important thing, right? What we want to do is we want to, I don't know if this is a great example, but we encourage continuous change in our organization, not just for the sake of changing, but for the sake of growing. Yes. We want people to work themselves out of a job. And that's what we tell our employees, right? That can cause some alarm if you tell somebody you want to work. Yeah. Hey, work yourself out of a job.
Yep. No, I get it.
By that. I need my job. No, what we want you to do is we want you to make sure that you're communicating and sharing everything that you know. Whether it be purpose, whether it be your beliefs, whether it be your knowledge, whatever it is, share that with the people around you. Share it with your peers, because as we grow as an organization, there are hopefully going to be opportunities, and there are, and we want you to develop and take advantage of those opportunities for growth. Yeah. But you can only take advantage of those opportunities for growth if you have the folks around you that can fill that void that allows you to take yourself to the next level.
Yep. Yeah. Clone yourself, right?
Correct.
And from the beginning of your journey, because I want to give you a couple points for even just engaging in this conversation with Colt to start with. But from the beginning of your journey, let's call that on a scale of 1 to 10, purpose-driven being a 1, since you engaged with Colt, to the most high-performing organization that's got purpose deeply embedded at every level is a 10. Where do you feel like you are 6 months in?
Oh man, you're going to ask me to be honest now. If I'm being honest, I would say we're probably, I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 10, Sarah, I'd probably give us a 6. If on a good day, maybe a 7.
I think that's a fantastic number. I mean, again, for a very short journey, I think that's fantastic.
But here's the caveat: we're 6 months in. 3 months ago, I'd have probably given us a 3.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Big change.
Yeah,
Big
it is a big
change.
change because I think we stumbled a little bit in the beginning. We were so excited as a management team that met with Colt, excited about our purpose, excited about what we've learned, excited about what we could develop, excited to share it, just excited. So we shot out like a cannon, right?
Yeah, it sounds like you met with me. Yeah, totally.
But we were, everybody was, which was fantastic. That's what you want to leave with. You want to have everybody excited about what it is that we just did, what we achieved, and what more we could achieve, right? So everybody comes out. We want to get the organization involved. We're having meetings. We're bringing people in. I think we went a bit too fast. I think what we needed to do is we needed to step back a little bit. We needed to slow down, and we need to have a more in-depth conversation and engagement, much like the one we had as a management group, where people really understood what it was we were doing, why we were doing it, how it was going to benefit not only our organization, but them as individuals. So we stepped back and we kind of we assessed what we had done probably incorrectly, and we came out with a very methodical approach and a more thoughtful approach for engagement. Then we started to see people say, I get it. We're connecting the dots now. That's what we didn't do. We didn't connect those dots for people, I think, in the beginning.
Great. I appreciate you bringing the honesty to that question.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, just sort of like as you observe business in general. I know that through your industry, your sector, you have a specific lens, but both within your organization and as you observe industry in general, are you having a sense that the priorities of business stakeholders are evolving relative to what they were, let's say, 5 years ago? And do you have a sense that it's going to be different from today to 5 years from now?
Yeah, boy, that's a huge question depending on where you live in that space, I think, right?
Sure.
I think we're really fortunate being the size that we are and always having been an organization that was really built on change, but change for the positive. And then also the investment in the people within the organization and creating the time to make that investment, right? So I think we're fortunate to be in that space. I think for a lot of other companies, it's probably much more difficult. I mean, I imagine anyway, if I'm a publicly traded organization, it's probably going to be really difficult for me to create that time. I've got shareholders, stakeholders that want that immediate return on their investment, right? So how do I spend that time doing it? And I think it's going to be a challenge for a lot of people. But I also think that larger organizations are going to recognize the value in that purpose and try and figure out how in the next 5 years, perhaps they're going to incorporate it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And can we double click on that a little bit? Because I want to understand from your perspective why purpose plays such a role, especially now in the economy that we're currently in. Can you talk a little bit more about, why that you think that these organizations need to figure this out and how that's going to add value to them in the long term?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, Sarah, really what it is we've had this business for 25 years now, and we have been fortunate enough to grow and create and foster relationships. Most of our customer base is a repeat customer base. There are customers that buy from us on a very consistent basis. And we've got competition. They have opportunities to go elsewhere, but we've been fortunate enough to develop relationships. What purpose does for us is it helps us strengthen those relationships and make them more meaningful relationships, because I can go out as president of the company, our CEO can go out, our vice president can go out, and they can form relationships with organizations. And that's great at a senior management level. The reality is senior managers are making decisions, but they're not having interactions, typically on a daily basis, right? They're not the boots on the ground. For me, the value is now we've been able to foster those relationships at the boots on the ground level, right? So now we're creating not only a deeper engagement, a better relationship with our customers, but our customers are recognizing more than ever the solutions that we bring to them, rather than just being a catalog house where they can pick up the phone. If they don't find it that day, they can call our competition. They have the confidence that we're invested in them, and that we're interested in what it is that they're trying to achieve and helping them achieve that.
Yeah, and
Wow.
it sounds like, as organizations grow, one of the hardest things to do with as you're trying to scale an organization is to keep that level of relationship and customer service as you're growing an organization to scale. It sounds, if I'm interpreting what you're saying, it sounds as though purpose really helps keep that relationship solid as you kind of transfer it to other boots on the ground that allows the organization to scale. Is that a fair assessment?
That's an absolutely fair assessment. Yeah, spot on. And you mentioned the economy that we're in. Economy for us right now, I mean, you're starting to see a lot of layoffs in a lot of different organizations. We don't know if the economy is going to soften even more. But I've unfortunately been part of some really soft economies over my career. And what customers typically do, I think, in any industry, is in a robust economy versus a challenged or less robust economy, they change from really price to availability, right? In other words, you in a robust economy, it's when can I have it, and in a challenged economy, it's how much is it? So I think what purpose helps us do in fostering these relationships with our customers is it helps not have that conversation so much around price, because we have so much more of a value add, because our customers see that we're invested in them and they trust us to provide those solutions at a fair price, obviously, but we're not a catalog house. We're not somebody that they can just pick up and call Granger or whoever it is might be. They really value what we bring. So I think in a challenged economy, I think that helps our organization tremendously.
Wow. Brent, the catalog of value that you guys have gained from orienting around purpose just sounds tremendous. And I'm so excited about the fact that we got to have a conversation with you really at this stage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because what we're really trying to do with the Elev8 podcast is give people visibility into tactics, practices, concepts, insights that they can put to use themselves. And you're right in it. You're right in that exercise of putting this to use for yourself. So what a powerful moment to speak to you. So having cataloged such a tremendous list of benefits, I think what I want to ask is, I mean, there's probably a ton of things that you could potentially recommend, but if you were to boil it down to maybe one or two like specific actions, what guidance do you have for other business leaders that have been hearing, wow, all those benefits sound great, Brent? What would you suggest they do to start their own kind of respective journeys?
I would say, first, like I'd mentioned, we stumbled a bit with this journey that we're on. So if I were to say, if I were starting and I were doing this again, I would approach it much more differently. But I think the most powerful thing that you can do if you are starting on this journey is just make sure that you're engaging everybody from top to bottom in the organization from day one. Right? So everybody sees that same row of seeds that have been planted, and everybody is invested in making sure they have the fertilizer and the water, whatever the hell it is they need to make those seeds germinate and grow. Right? So it's, you need the whole village, right? Not just a couple of people within it to make sure that the journey actually goes where you envision it going. I think you don't be afraid if it takes maybe longer than you want. That's probably where I failed. I was so excited about it. I wanted to just have it going immediately. So don't be afraid to take it slow. And I think by taking it slow, which I've mentioned we've done as we did the reboot about 3 months ago, it's been so much more valuable, not just for us, but for the people within our organization, which that's who it really needs to be valuable to, right? It has to be valuable to everybody, because they have to be having those conversations amongst their peers, like I had mentioned. They have to have those conversations with your customers. And I think they'll start to recognize it, take it home perhaps.
Yep.
Put it into their personal lives. Now we've got people that are coming to the office that are already happier and more fulfilled by the time they get here. And then when they get here, it's just even a better experience for them on a professional level as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of the way I see it.
I mean, I feel like you just hit it out of the park. You didn't just answer it, but you hit it out of the park. And you've been such an amazing guest for us because you've really personified, I think, tactically, so much of what Colt and I are so passionate about in this cross-pollination between purpose personally and business. And I just want to really give you kudos, right? Because you have, as the leader, you had to step forward, you had to invest the time and I'm sure resources and finances to go down this path. So thank you for that, being that type of leader. And I am curious, there's a lot of influences that made you who you are, that allowed you to go down this path and take the organization down this road. Could you share maybe a book, a TED Talk, something that influenced you as a leader that it gives you strength and courage to do something of this nature?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the compliment, Sarah. I really do appreciate that. It's been a fun journey, and it's definitely been worth all of the time, as you mentioned, and the expense and everything else that goes along with it. But it's one of those things that I think I'll look back on, 12 months from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and say, wow, that's one of the things in my career that I'm most proud of and most glad that I did. So, but thank you for that. And to answer your question, yeah, I mean, influentially, really, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that our owner and our CEO really built the culture within our organization. That's George Ratermann. And that culture, had it not been so strong and people already believed and lived so much in that culture and in the environment, that made it much, much easier for us to introduce purpose into the organization. So I would say, regardless of what, I've read, as I'm sure you guys have, so many different books on business and people and, how to, make your organization stronger, the people within it. But it's the culture and it's the environment that you create for people. That's the important thing. And if we didn't have that, I don't think we would have, I think we'd have been 6 months in where we are today. I don't think we would achieve that in 6 months. It would have been more like 12, 18, 24, because you've got to have the culture to really get people already have the foundation to embrace the purpose.
Excellent. I'm so happy to hear that. Wow.
Maybe we got to bring George on next.
I think so.
I'll tell you, I mean, really, I've had a number of great conversations with George. I think he's a phenomenal individual.
He is.
And as you mentioned it, I'm having this, of course, moment that he has exactly the kind of insights that I know our audience would be interested in. With that said, it's definitely happened that our audience has, by popular demand, insisted that we bring a guest back. I'll just kind of predict that that's likely to happen. If you are open to discussing with us again, Brent, I think that it won't be too long before we reach out to you for another conversation.
You know what? I love it, you guys. I mean, I'm just super excited to not only what we're doing, but to be able to share it. And, I just really enjoyed the conversation. I really appreciate you guys having me.
Well, we certainly appreciate the time that you've given us, and we are so excited to share all of these great insights with all of our listeners.
Awesome.
Right on. Well, thank you, Brent.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Well,
Thanks very much again.
Have a great day.
All right.